I'm one of the pastors here at Cornerstone, and as Francis mentioned, I'm in charge of kind of the finance, HR, and some of the administrative areas. And before I show you some statistics, I just want to tell you some stuff that's been going on in my wife, Tayden, and her life and my life over the past couple of months. We've really been, just through a lot of the sermons here at Cornerstone, feeling like we've settled into a safe Christianity, and that we've kind of just gone about our business doing the 10% to the church, 10% to savings, and then do whatever we want with the rest. And so as we were looking at that, we started thinking, is the church in America like that? Because we're kind of products of that. And so I went across and found some research from a group called Empty Tomb. They're located in Illinois, a Christian organization. And for the past several years, they've been surveying churches and denominations to see what the giving trends are in churches in America. And a lot of the data is very denominationally driven. So it wouldn't include churches like Cornerstone. But it goes back all the way to 1921 and looks at some giving trends all the way up through 2004. So I want to show you a slide. And this is a chart that they had put together dealing with giving as a percentage of income. And I want to point out a couple of things. If you look at the per capita income column, what that refers to is you take all the income that was generated in the United States and divide it by the number of people in the country at the time, and you get a per capita income. And so it's not an average salary, it's just basically spreading our income out over all of the people in the United States. In 1921, the per capita income was $4,971 a year, and that's been inflation adjusted to the year 2000, so that $1 in 1921 is equivalent to $1 in the year 2000. And at that time, people in churches were giving on average 2.9% of their income to the church. During the Great Depression, this is the one that really stuck out for me, the per capita income had dropped, yet people were giving a higher percentage of their income, giving upwards of 3.3%. And then if you fast forward to the year 2004, and you look at the per capita income in the United States has jumped significantly to over $27,000 per person, and our giving has gone down to 2.5%. And so what we're seeing is that as our income has gone up exponentially, our giving has dropped. And I think that's kind of a sad statement on the state of the church in America. This was a sample of 11 Protestant denominations, so there's some denominations that gave higher than this, but most of them never got above really the 5 to 6% range on average. And when I look at a slide like this, I think of verses like in Luke 21 where Jesus is in the temple and the rich are putting their money into the treasury, and then a widow comes in and gives her 2 coins, and Jesus says that she's given more than the rich did because they gave out of their wealth, but she's giving out of her poverty. And when I look at a stat like this, I feel like as the church in America, we're giving out of our wealth. We're not giving out of our poverty. We're not giving by faith. So after looking at that, I thought, well, what are we doing at Cornerstone? And so this next slide is going to be full of some assumptions, so it's not an absolute. The number that's absolute, though, is the total contributions. From the time period of July 1, 2005 through June 30 of 2006, we had nearly $5.9 million come in, and that's for general offering and things like supporting missions and the college and things like that. So that's a good number, and I just want to tell you, coming on staff here, it's so neat to see a church that responds when needs are put in front of you, and we have seen awesome examples of this church responding to give. And so when I look at that number, I get pretty excited, thinking $5.9 million, that's a great number. But then I wanted to do some kind of assumptions, so I looked at the average number of attendees that come to Cornerstone per weekend, and that would be adults. And we have around 4,000. It might be just a little shy of that. In the church, then we try to break down and say, of those 4,000 people, there's probably around 1,500 giving units. So you have families that are in there that would give. In Simi Valley, according to Fortune magazine's most recent report on best places to live, our median household income in Simi Valley is just over $85,000. And so what that means is 50% are making more than $85,000 and 50% are making below $85,000. $85,000 is that middle point. So if you just took some rough numbers and said there are 1,500 giving units in our church, and if you just assume that we were right at the median household income, we would be having an estimated household income from people at this church of over $127 million. I don't know if that's an accurate figure or not, but that's a nice chunk of money. Then if you take contributions at 10%, we would have $12.7 million coming in. And when you look at the difference between almost $6 million and over $12 million, if our church, if these numbers were true, that we had 1,500 giving units and our median income was $85,000, we could have an additional nearly $6 to $7 million that we could give and give out to the poor. And the concern in putting a slide like this up is I don't want you to think we're begging for your money for us. We're looking at our budgets for next year, trying to do our best at slimming down what we spend on ourselves and giving more out to the poor and out to the work of missions. The next slide is back to the study by Empty Tomb. And they had looked and said, okay, in the year 2004, if everybody that historically called themselves Christians, were part of the Christian church, gave 10% of their income, an additional $164 billion would have been raised. A huge number. And then they said if we took 60% of that and gave it to missions, overseas missions, we'd have $98.4 billion to spend on overseas missions. Then you could take 20% and cover your domestic missions and have $32.8 billion. And then knowing that to pull something like this off is going to take a lot of administrative work, they had just taken a number of another 20% that you'd use for administration, and that would give you the another $32.8 billion. So in the church in America, if we just gave 10%, just a tithe, we would be able to bring in an additional $164 billion that could be used for global evangelism. Now, the final slide I want to show you is an estimate that Empty Tomb had come up with for what it would take to take care of certain needs in a given year. And they estimated that in a given year, if you wanted to do global evangelism, you would need $1 billion. If you wanted to end global child deaths for children under the age of 5, you would need $5 billion. And then providing basic education across the globe, you would need $7 billion. So that's $13 billion per year. They went further and said $70 to $80 billion per year could provide the basic needs of every person on the globe per year. And so when I looked at that, I just thought, what is happening in the church in America today? I feel like we've fallen asleep to a certain extent, because if we just gave 10%, we could basically, the church in America could take care of all the basic needs for people across the world. And routing back with what Francis is talking about, they'll see our good deeds so that they may glorify our Father who is in heaven. I don't want you to think that I'm throwing these slides up to manipulate you or guilt you into anything. These were eye-opening to me, to think if I just trusted God with my money and gave to him out of faith, amazing things could happen. And that's been a challenge that my wife and I have been wrestling through, of how do we play a part in that. And I think Cornerstone has the great opportunity to be a church, because we do respond when God puts things in front of us. We have a great opportunity to maybe get out on the front end of this and really start stretching ourselves so that we can take care of the poor and the needy across the world, and in turn introduce them to Jesus Christ.